We are live. But before we get started with tonight's discussion, let's just make sure we have all of our platforms included. We want to make sure we have an all inclusive platform. All right, and looks like we are good. Welcome in, everyone, to another installment of the Orange and Blue View. I am one of your hosts, Ron White. On that side of me, you know him, you love him as my co host, Dylan Von Arks. Dylan, how are you doing today on this Saturday?
Not too bad, just trying to beat the heat. It's been in about the mid 90s to the 100 teens here in California. So just trying to stay cool, I don't want to sweat through the camera here tonight, hopefully. But other than that, we're doing good.
Yeah, likewise. It's like I was telling you in the room before we went live. We've had some rain here in Georgia this week, which was very much needed. And obviously hot. Today wasn't too bad though, but I'm thankful for that rain. So um, let's see who we have in the chat tonight. We got Mike S coming in saying, "What's up, Dylan, Ron, Scott, and Broncos country?" Mike, what is up with you, my man? Thank you for coming in. We appreciate it. We appreciate it. Let's see who else we have here. We have Daniel Berry Sports Highlights saying, "Yo." Yo to you as well, Daniel. Thank you. Thank you for coming in. And then we got Adam Strange coming in with a "What's up, Broncos Maniacs?" What's up with you, Adam? Hopefully you are doing well on this Saturday. Thank you for coming in. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then Roy Osborne coming in from Facebook. Good evening, Ron and Dylan. Getting so much closer to the training camp. Yeah, definitely. 23rd, I believe the rookies came in on the 17th. 23rd is when the official training camp kicks off. So we are that much closer, Roy, to the start of camp. And Dylan, I think I can speak for you as well. Like, I'm just excited. I'm excited to see, all the battles. Excited to see, um, everyone out in the field again. It's gonna be good.
Yeah, super excited. It's always a exciting time of the year. We're getting out of that slow season. It makes everyone here in the chat will be happier, and us too as writers as well have a little more something to write about instead of trying to refilter through whatever is coming out, and usually it's arrests and whatnot this time of year. So yeah, we're ready to get this off season over with for sure.
Yes, yes, yes. And we got Todd Osendorf coming in, saying hello, Ron, Dylan, and Broncos country. Denver Broncos for life. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, thank you. We appreciate it, my guy. Now let's see who else. And we got Mr. Phil McLaughlin coming in. Thank you, Phil. We appreciate you coming in time and time again. It really helps us. From Facebook, he says, "Good evening, Ron and Dylan. Do we sign Cooper and Browning soon or let one go?" Hashtag Buckham, hashtag MHH for life, hashtag um, Broncos for life. Phil, yeah, this is a very interesting question. Um, I would say yes, probably you can sign one soon and let one go. I'm kind of tossing though, Dylan, to figure out to see which one I want the Broncos to resign and which one I'm thinking that should be let go. Because I'm a fan of both. I
Mhm.
honestly think that um, for Browning, the fact that they moved him to edge, I thought, at first we didn't like it, or I know some Broncos fans didn't like it, but now him moving to edge proved to be pretty good showing so far. And then with Cooper, I like what he brings as well. I think I'm gonna go, and again, this is really hard here, Phil. But if I had the choice to let one to resign one, I'm going to go with Cooper. Just because of the injury we've seen with Browning. Um, I don't know, what's as far as any type of trade you may get with Browning. I highly doubt that's. I don't think there's any trade value there, not much. But I think if I had to choose one to re-sign, and again, given just what that injury history for Browning did provide, I'm going to go with Jonathan Cooper. A great question.
Yeah. Yeah, as much as I would love to say Browning, because I do think he's a great player, explosive off the edge, and he's shown a lot of flashes. It's just like you mentioned, that health can't stay healthy. Imagine if we could get a full season of Baron Browning. I think we would have a lot less questions about our edge room, but fortunately, that's not the case. Yeah, you got to go with Cooper here. I think I honestly they could be battling this season like a kind of a battle that's on the back burner and maybe not everyone's thinking about, but I don't know if they keep both these guys. I think it might just be one. And if Cooper can stay consistent and just stay on the field like he has, I think he shores that up, and I think we sign Cooper.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Phil, for coming in with that question. Very very good question. Very insightful. All right, gang. So, want to get into tonight's topic, and I see a lot of you guys have made some comments, so we'll definitely be getting into some of these. So the pod tonight is centered around some rankings that CBS has just recently put out as it pertains to the NFL head coaches entering the 2024 and 2025 NFL season. So providing their rankings, obviously given the landscape, what happened last year, going into this year, how some of the rosters are constructed, and the coaching ability. I think it was Cody Benjamin compiled a list there from CBS. So on that list, your Broncos head coach, Sean Payton, is ranked number 18. And here is why Cody Benjamin ranked him that ranking. He said there might not be a tougher coach to place, perhaps because Payton's become so polarizing. Once the vaunted leader of a hyper-efficient New Orleans Saints contender, he's managed a single playoff victory in his last 4 years as a head coach. And now he's resetting the table in Denver, likely with a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix. So again, we're going to get to you guys' comments. Obviously, there are various opinions on this, but I think, Dylan, you have to look at things in context. And, I'll get into how I feel about some of the coaches that were ranked before Sean or ahead of Sean Payton. But, when you look at, I think or at least Cody looks like he's tried to do a good job of looking at some experience and some of the history and the resume of Sean Payton, but also looking at it from what transpired last year and going into 2024. So when you factor in all of those things, obviously a Super Bowl winning head coach, so no spring chicken whatsoever. But then what happened last year? Now, I will say last year, the Broncos did some things, like I think they took some steps forward. They made progress, getting that losing record off their back against Kansas City. Obviously that was a big thing. That winning streak, I think the Broncos learned somewhat how to win again under Sean Payton as well. So you have to look at it from that perspective. But then that question now becomes, how does 2024 look when you're starting over at quarterback? So when you look at everything kind of in the grand scheme of things, guys, I would say 18th ranking, that's about near the pack, average, middle of the pack. I would say that's pretty fair given what all he has. Now we can take a look at, who else is ahead of him. And there are a few, Dylan, I can pick some bones with. Like Jim Harbaugh. I mean, now granted, we know what he did when he was with the 49ers. And obviously at Michigan, but coming back first year on a return, I think seventh, and just as an FYI to everyone out there in the chat, Jim Harbaugh is ranked seventh. So I think that one is a little too high. Obviously, I know what Jim Harbaugh brings, but I think that's a little too high. You have Kevin O'Connell at 12th. Now, the Vikings did make some steps forward as well. I think they did get to a playoff game and lost. But, I think that one might be a little too high too. But given some of these other players here, Dylan, I mean, D'Amico Ryan at 13th. We know what happened with that team last year. Mike McDaniel at 11th. Obviously, Andy Reid at number 1, Kyle Shanahan at 3. So when you look at some of the head coaches that have gone before Payton in this list, you can start to see, yeah, that makes sense. And you maybe start to see why they put Payton at 18th, given kind of where the Broncos are, what happened last year, and kind of where the Broncos are going into next season.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it's a fair ranking in terms of if we're talking about last year and going into the season. That's mainly what the article is, guys. You have to take it with a grain of salt. It's not a totality of Sean Payton's career. So, and for his first year back and with all the stuff he had to deal with last year, I think it's a pretty decent ranking. I don't like it, obviously. I'd like to be ranked higher, but taking a step back from my Broncos fandom, I think that's pretty fair. Obviously, you mentioned some of the coaches that are ranked ahead. D'Amico Ryan's obviously first year head coach, but again, if we're looking at the scope of 23 going into 24, I can see why he's that high up. I mean, him and a rookie quarterback got to the playoffs and won a game. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to these things too, you're always the head coach is always going to get paired with their quarterback when you're thinking about this stuff in mind, except for possibly not Aiden O'Connell, Kevin O'Connell with the Vikings. And I know I saw some people are saying he's not a better coach. I see Todd mentions he's not a better coach. Maybe not in totality of career, but in terms of the past couple of years and going in this year. Yeah, I believe they made the playoffs or just missed it, but he had 3 different quarterbacks because Cousins went down. Then you have, I believe, Dobbs for a little bit, Nick Mullins. Mm-hmm. So there's some pieces there. He can make stuff work with his offense, and I think obviously there's more offensive talent there. But hey, that's just how it happens. If you don't have the talent, your coach is going to get knocked down a couple notches. But I mean, what did Sean Payton have to work with last year? He had Russell Wilson, who didn't really run his offense, but he improved what Russell Wilson did from 2022. If you look at the stats, in 2022, Russ had 3,500 yards, 16 touchdowns, 11 receptions, and an 84 QBR. And then Sean Payton comes in. Obviously, he misses the last 2 games. Russell, he was benched, but 3,000 yards, so less than the year before, but 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions and a 98 QBR. So he can boost the talent at quarterback. It's just he made the best of what he could with Russell Wilson last year, and that's a testament to him as a coach.
Yeah, definitely. And then I'm just going to get into some of the comments here. Todd thinks Sean Payton is a top 10 head coach, especially when you rank Harbaugh and LA as number 7. This ranking is just wrong. Yeah, so Todd, I see where you're coming from. I definitely get it. And I'm with you in the sense that, yeah, I do think based on overall resume, Sean Payton is a top 10 head coach. I don't think anyone's really questioning that. But again, this is based on what transpired last season going into this season, given what each team is working with. So when you look at it in the grand scheme of things in its totality, that's how this is being measured. But I'm with you. I'm with you kind of on this last part of, yeah, Harbaugh, I just think it's just a little too high for me. At number 7, like why would they rank Harbaugh number 7? And again, I know it's some of that experience and what he did at, with the 49ers in Michigan, but before you even see Harbaugh, in a full first season, let's just pause for a second. Maybe not having a number 7. Maybe kind of rank him a little bit near the back end. But yeah, Todd, I definitely see where you're coming from, my man. Thank you for the comment.
Yeah, and again, context is key. Like this is last year going next year. We're not talking, the totality of his career. And I see you just right here. I'll just pull up your comment here. You can't just look at last season. It's too myopic. You need a larger lens when looking at who's better as head coach. Otherwise, the results are skewed. I agree with you completely. But once again, this is specifically talking about 23 going into 24. If this was a list on top coaches in the NFL, just in general, and they, include his resume in New Orleans, then I think he's probably a top 5 to 8 coach. But I would probably say top 5. But yeah, it's based on, like I said, 23 to 24, and obviously the Harbaugh ranking. I do agree that's a little weird. I understand it. There's the prestige of it's the Harbaugh name, always going to be ranked higher. Think they're going with more potential there and what they think could happen. Obviously, they have the quarterback unquestioned there, and obviously we have Nix. We drafted him, but we haven't seen him play for the Broncos yet, so I think that plays in. But I understand where you're coming from in terms of the some of the coaches, including Harbaugh, being ranked that high.
Yes, thank you, Todd, and I'm with you as well. I mean, Todd, myopic, possibly, sure, but again, it's all based on last year and going into this year, and obviously, depending on the success of the team, how great Bo Nix is, Sean Payton has, the ability to change that narrative. But I think a lot of people wouldn't be surprised given just kind of where the state of the team is right now. Mike S. coming in, thank you. And Harbaugh hasn't coached the team yet. Could be a failure as a head coach. Could be. I mean, I guess
I wouldn't bet
what
on
we've
it.
seen before. Yeah, I was going to say what we've seen before. It's quite the contrary. But anything can happen. But I would say all of Harbaugh's stops have been successful. So, I don't think that's going to happen, Mike. But this is a new team for him. New set of players. He's very adamant about the ground game. So you'll see a lot of ground attack from that Chargers offense for sure. But yeah, I don't think Harbaugh is going to be a failure. But again, anything can happen.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, from Stanford to the 49ers to Michigan and now back to LA. Obviously, we haven't seen LA yet, like you mentioned, but he's been successful everywhere he's gone. He hasn't won a Super Bowl yet, but he got there and he was in the NFC Championship quite a few times. And he won a national championship with the Wolverines and JJ McCarthy. I'm not going to say he'd be a failure as a head coach in LA because I just don't see the Harbaughs bottoming out like that. That just the Harbaugh name. Obviously, I said before, the Harbaugh name you get a little bit of a bump because of the name recognition, but there's a reason for that. They're both John and Jim are great head coaches,
and both are champions. Mm-hmm. I mean, one with the Ravens, one with the Wolverines. So again, you're right, Dylan. That Harbaugh name, it goes far, and I know this was over a decade ago with the 49ers, but he's shown that he can coach a team all the way up to the Super Bowl. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how this team and his coaching style, how that works. But you again, given what he's done, I don't see him failing. But thank you, Mike, for coming in with that. Let's see who else. We got Jerron Washington coming in. Thank you, Jerron. Says people are going to be so shocked when Bo Nix has a great season. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that comes as any surprise, Jerron. all these rankings now have the Broncos, if not at the bottom, near the bottom. There's not much faith when it comes to, you know, the Sean Payton and Bo Nix connection. But I, again, Broncos fans, people who live and breathe Denver Broncos know that, you know, Sean Payton has a very good scheme, and we think that Bo Nix fits this scheme perfectly. Now, all that to say, Bo Nix will have his struggles. So that I want to make sure I'm clear on what I'm saying here. That we all will see Bo Nix struggle. There will be times, but I think when it's all said and done, Jaron, and again, I think for this, Dylan, that's where we are with the season of is is number 10 going to be the guy or not? I mean, I really think that's just what it is. Is he going to be the future of this team or not? And I have faith with the coaching of Sean Payton that, you know, once he kind of gets through those challenges, those struggles, those rough patches, that he's going to have a pretty respectable season. And again, it should be very optimistic for fans and everyone in Broncos country moving forward.
And it kind of depends on how you quantify a great season. So I would say like a great season for him as a rookie. Let's say 26 touchdowns, 3,400 yards, somewhere in there, maybe around 10 picks or so. I think that would be pretty great for a rookie quarterback. Going forward, though, yeah, you hope he could be the face of this franchise, because as much as I love having Vaughn as the face, a defensive guy, and now PS2, I think I'd rather have a quarterback be there. And with and as for how successful Bo Nix could be in the future, let's say he is the guy, there's that synergy with quarterback and coach, like I mentioned earlier. And this is truly Sean Payton's guy. I'm just going to read off, and I had to write this in my notes on my phone because it was so much, but it'll be quick. So these are the yards per game while Sean Payton was in New Orleans with Drew Brees, his guy. 2006, first. 2007, fifth. 2008 and 9, both first. 2010, fifth. 2011, first. 2012, second. 2013, third. 2014 to 17, they were first. And then 18, 19, you go 8, 9, and then 12 as Drew Brees starts to decline a bit. So when Sean Payton has a quarterback that he has synergy with and that he can use, Bo Nix presumably, not saying they're going to be top 5 in yards per game this season, but that's a bright future, assuming Nix is the guy.
Yes, for sure. And I want to get to thank you, J. Ron, coming, and I want to get to String Guy here coming in. Says Ron, I don't think we can talk about Nix being great until we see if he can beat out Stidham and Wilson in training camp. And you're absolutely, String Guy. I never said that. He is great. We don't know yet. I guess I'm looking at it more from with Nix's skill set and what Sean Payton can do from an offensive mind perspective. I'm encouraged. Now, what we see here in training camp, I mean, or what we will see in training camp will definitely tell us for sure. But from what I've seen, and I think the past few pods, Dylan, I've said this, that even earlier in OTAs and such, with Stidham and Nix, there wasn't much separation at all. String Guy, there was really there was really none. So I think it might have been very, very minute. So when I'm looking at it from that perspective, I just don't see how you can say that Nix won't beat out a Stidham and Wilson. I honestly think that, he will. Just because given what we've seen. Now, again, we'll see how it all shakes out in camp. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more put on him there in camp. And we'll see kind of how he takes that, how he responds to that. But Dylan, from earlier on up until now, nothing's really caused me to pause to say, hey, I don't think Nix is going to be named the starter, or I think Stidham is better, right? I still think Nix is the one to be the starter, given what we've seen.
Yeah, and typically if you're hearing that kind of talk that Stidham is going to start over, that's coming from outlets or personalities online, whoever that have to focus a wide scope on the entire NFL. They don't focus specifically on certain teams. So they just see, Stidham, a rookie. Yeah, we'll put Stidham over him. They'll start the rookie whenever. Um, as for Zach Wilson, I don't think he's got a dog in the fight unless
Right.
one of these guys gets injured, knock on wood. But like you mentioned, if it's close, I mean, it seems like all the indications are that it's a close battle. But even if by the end of, I think they'll probably wait till the end of preseason game 2 to name a starter. But say Stidham's up here and Bo's right about here, they're still going to start Bo. I mean, if it's close, you still start the rookie. It's just, I don't understand why you would start Stidham. He's not some, I bring it up all the time. It's not like Alex Smith when he was ahead of Mahomes. You don't have like the entrenched starter that like Alex Smith was, because he played many great years for the Chiefs before Mahomes got there. And so he wasn't just going to ride the bench while this rookie comes in and takes his job in year 1. So, but like I mentioned, Bo doesn't have that in front of him. He has to take this job by the reins, keeping it the Broncos, and really win this job, and I think he will.
Yes, definitely. But thank you, String Guy, for your comment. We appreciate you, my guy. We got Eric Flynn coming in with some Facebook stars. Thank you, Eric. We appreciate it. And if you have a question or comment, make sure you put it in the chat. I want to get to, there's a few here from Phil. Thank you, Phil, again for coming in. He says, I was reading that Payton was ranked 4th best NFL coach, and PS2 is ranked number 1. So yeah, that 4th ranking came from Colin Cowherd. So yeah, Colin Cowherd put that list together. I think that was things that came from the Fox outlets of Colin's top NFL coaches. And I think he had Andy Reid, Sean McVay, John Harbaugh, and then Sean Payton and Mike Tomlin as your top 5. And then for PS2, that is correct. So there was I think all the league execs, coaches, scouts recently voted, and Patrick Surtain came in at number 1. And it's the obvious choice at number 1. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that,
unless you're a
Jets
Jets
fan.
fan.
Kind of give you some insight. Unless you're a Jets fan, because you want to put Sauce in there, which Sauce holds too much for me.
He's a solid number 2, we'll say.
Yeah. Yeah. But thank you, Phil. And then stars from Phil. Thank you, Phil, again. He says, just read that Cooper is the most underrated Denver Bronco. Who is your most underrated? I'm going to pass this one off to you first, Dylan. Who is your most underrated Bronco player?
Underrated. I think heading into this season specifically, I'm going to have to go with PJ Locke. I think he showed a lot last year. Obviously, he's not going to be able to full-time. He's not going to be Justin Simmons. And I think we all know that, and that sucks because we really love Justin Simmons. But I think he's a guy who's in your secondary and can make a big impact like he showed last season, starting at the meet and greet. Obviously, I'd like us to take a little bit of credit for that. But he took a big step forward this season. I think he can do it again, especially Jim Leonard as the DB coach. I'm really excited about that hire. Waiting to get that DC job, no doubt in my mind. But he's so creative in the way that he uses his defensive backs. And I think with a guy like PJ Locke, who's super talented, and he's going to have another year in this system, I think he will take that next step. And I think he's not talked about as much as maybe some of these other Broncos.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's hard to argue, especially, when he came in last year, and I mean, he was just sensational. So I am glad that the Broncos, kept him around, and I'm just so excited to see what he's going to do, in that role this year. Mine will also be on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm going to go with Jaquan McMillian.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of his. He's just so physical, so scrappy. His attention to detail on the defense, able to, go toe to toe with, some of the league's best when it comes to, the tight ends and the receivers. I just think he's very underrated. What he can do, like a lot of those plays we saw last year. Um, he was always in the mix, Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think the Broncos kind of need that aggression, moving forward on defense, especially. And I would say, Phil, yeah, that's probably my most underrated player.
Yeah, and that's a great pick. Obviously, he's like you mentioned, he's a feisty corner, and that's what we want on this team. The most memorable play for me from him last season was ripping that ball out the first play against Buffalo. Oh, I
Buffalo,
jumped
yeah.
out of my seat. I was live tweeting the game, and I almost flung the laptop off of my lap. And like it was crazy because you don't always expect that kind of stuff from the first play of the game, And he's just that impact player, and obviously, he was a little shaky towards the end of the year, but that's kind of what you expect. He's an undrafted rookie and whatnot, and I think he'll take bigger strides this year to be even better. And he's got that slot corner position locked up. I think that there's no
Yes,
question there.
yes, for sure, for sure. Thank you, Phil, for coming. That was a great question, my man. We appreciate that. We got Howie freaking Day coming in with some Facebook stars. Thank you, sir, for coming. If you have a question or comment, make sure you drop it in the chat. But again, thank you for coming in. And then we got Todd Osendorf coming back in. It says, I've heard nothing but good things about Bo Nick so far. I've also heard the concerns about his arm strength are overblown. Yes. Yes, Todd. So I think that's where that's kind of aligning with what I said earlier of what you've heard, what you've seen, in OTAs, earlier in the off season. Um, a lot of people are excited. They like what they've seen from Bo Nix. And Dylan, I've also seen some clips of the arm, that he has a pretty average, above average, deep ball. The arm strength seems to be fine to me.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say, Todd, I agree that, you know, there are definitely some things that a lot of people are saying there's still some concerns, but again, I think we'll see how he continues to improve. And again, in training camp, will there be any separation between him and Stidham? I highly doubt it. I think he'll lock this thing up early. I think he kind of already has it locked up,
Mm-hmm.
but I think he'll solidify
Mm-hmm.
that starting role at once training camp is done. So I agree with you, Todd.
Yeah. What's overblown about his arm strength is there's this misconception. I'm going to say again because I bring it up a lot. It's not about how far he can throw because he can throw it far, and that's great. It's awesome that he can do that. Yeah, it's about the velocity. How fast can you get it there? And obviously, you can negate some of that pre-snap if you know that's your guy. You get it out early. It's going to be a lot of that. And it's not to say that he can't zip some throws in, but the NFL speed of the NFL game is much quicker than in college. There's grown men running around out there. It's not college kids. And obviously, like, I think it maybe it's a little overblown for sure, but it's in terms of velocity, not depth. I know everyone. I think unless you were hide under a rock or something, you see his highlights or whatever. He's throwing deep. There's no question about that. It's just ball floats in the air a little longer than you want it to sometimes, and that's, like I said, you can kind of negate that. Well, maybe not entirely, but pre-snap. If you can just get the ball out quicker instead of, you don't have to be Josh Allen with a cannon or Mahomes, the cannon, just flicking it with their wrist, or even Lamar's really good at that. But yeah, it's I wouldn't. I think it's a little overblown in a certain sense, and I see a 3 miles per hour difference is not that great. That's throwing straight into a wall. I know they measure. That's a weird measurement. I don't really put much stock into that, but it's more of a velocity thing for sure.
Yep. Yes, for sure. All right. Thank you, Todd, again for coming in with that comment. Let's just see who else we have. Got one for you here, Dylan String Guy, coming back in. Dylan, do you want Knicks as the starter in game 1?
Yes.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I think he needs to be the starter week 1. Because all I ever saw, and this was obviously, I wasn't the biggest guy for Knicks, I liked him. I didn't love him. I still feel the same way until obviously he proves me otherwise. Maybe I'll fall in love with him. That's fine. I'd be happy to. I want a good quarterback on this team. But I just don't see how people can make comments, supercomputer, all these starts. He's so experienced, all this, and then say, well, maybe he should sit. That doesn't compute to me. If this guy's got a supercomputer, he can go through his pre-snap reads quickly, and he's got a good enough arm and all this college experience, then start him. What are we even talking about? I don't think Stidham moves the needle, and I don't think Payton's going to be that patient. And I think it, like I mentioned before, it'll be a competition in camp, and I think it's probably already shored up. That's just my opinion, but they won't announce anything until maybe after that second preseason game.
Yeah. And I want him as the starter too, String Guy. And I'm going to put this comment here, Free Earth Citizen coming in. Elbridge rookie year was bad. 7 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, 47.5 completion percentage. Knicks won't get better sitting on the bench. And that last comment is why I want him as the starter in week 1. I think, again, based on what he's done at Oregon, what we've seen in OTAs, and again, Dylan is he's going to improve in camp. Mm-hmm. I think he's showing that he's good enough to kind of grasp different concepts and such. So, given all of that, and this is for String Guy as well, why would you not want Knicks to be the starter? So I want him out there, getting snaps in early, getting used to, the scheme, things pre-snap, obviously building that chemistry with the players. I think he needs to get out there day 1 and start. So
yeah, and then this is obviously LA's rookie year was terrible, and he'll do better than this. He better, or he's not.
Oh yeah.
they're going to be looking. They're going to be looking for a quarterback here in short order. And you gotta when people compare, like, even Peyton Manning's numbers, I'm like, listen, totally different eras, especially LA. But even Manning, when he started, completely different era. This today's game is so much more tailored to don't touch the quarterback, and it's more tailored towards offense. That's why you have Manning and Brady. If they were like in their primes in this day and age, they'd be doing the same numbers as Mahomes or better. And maybe that's an exaggeration, but I feel like that's kind of the truth. And that's why when people are like, oh, is Mahomes the greatest of all time? I'm like, well, he's the greatest of his era currently. Sure. But if you put him when Manning was playing, does he do the same things? Obviously, he's an amazing talent, but with the way the game, you could hit quarterbacks more, you could hit receivers more, a lot more wear and tear in terms of that and making them real. He likes to cry when he gets knocked down or even just gets brushed upon, which it pisses me off. But yeah, I think Knicks, especially in this day and age, are throwing more than ever from passing camps through school and then into the NFL. You have a better idea of what products are coming into the NFL through their first season and a half, perhaps, and especially with Knicks having the the record 61 starts in college.
One start. Mm-hmm. Yes. Alrighty. Thank you for your answering guy for coming in. Let's see.
Yeah, here, there's actually one I want to pull up here. This is back to Knicks's arm talent here. Todd Ossendorf comes back in. He says, who cares? It gets fractions of a second later. That's a lot in the NFL. Seconds to fractions of seconds is a lot, and then overcome through anticipation. Yes, like I mentioned, if you can identify things early in anticipation and what have you. But it's more about once he gets pushed off his spot, or the defense is disguising a look and they're like, oh, we're coming in for a blitz. Oh, now we just backed out. Now you have to read the coverage differently. You can anticipate a lot. And, I know we're expecting him to be elite, or some of us are expecting him to be elite right off the bat when in terms of pre-snap and anticipation. That's just not going to be the case. I hate to break it to y'all, but he's not going to be Drew Brees or Tom Brady or Peyton Manning right off the bat. It's going to take some time, and it's more of a thing where that extra arm strength could help him get away with a little more, especially when he's younger and in the league. But yeah, it's more about when you get pushed off your spot, can you adapt and can you fit it, especially in the red zone? That's a place where quarterbacks with quote unquote weaker arms. I don't think he has the weakest arm in the world, by the way. I think his arm's good. I think it's good enough. But once you get down the red zone, those windows get real tight. You get pushed off your spot, especially, and you have to anticipate. It's hard to anticipate when you get pushed off your spot. But I understand where you're coming from, but fractions of seconds do very much matter in the NFL.
Yeah, and I agree 100% with you, Dylan. And that's why those fractions of seconds do matter. Because Todd, you're right that anticipation is key. I really studied Jalen Hurts because there was a big difference between his first year and I think that year that they went to the Super Bowl. And you can tell, like, when he first came into the league, Dylan, he didn't throw with anticipation at all. He was just expecting guys to be open or waiting for guys to be open down the field and then launching it.
Yep.
Think about things like that. You have to try to anticipate the guy being open, knowing where the guy is on the field, where he is in the route, and then throwing him open. And I saw with him that next year he was able to do that quite well. So it goes with him studying, putting in the work, because he mentioned it. He mentioned that he really had to get in the lab. He really had to study film with some of how the other quarterbacks do it, and that's something where he had to learn of knowing where the guys is on the route so he can throw them open as opposed to waiting for them to get open. And that's paramount. That's paramount when it comes to the quarterback position.
Definitely. And you see it with Brock Purdy as well. He's a very anticipatory thrower. You kind of have to be in that Shanahan offense, and obviously there's an all-star cast there. But yeah, it's a combination of that arm strength and that anticipation. It's like, hey, if I'm just a tick off in my anticipation, if I have the arm strength, I can really flick it in there and get it in anyway. And if not, then you might, like, a couple fractions of a second. That can be the difference in a game, in a throw.
Yep, for sure. All right, let's see who else we got coming in. Todd back in. I also think the Broncos wide receiver room is underrated.
Hmm.
Um, mm,
In
uh,
what
I guess,
sense?
yeah, Todd. If you can put in the chat, just elaborate on that.
Is
Now, I would say as a whole, no. Um, there, there are specific players. Now, I think now Cortland Sutton for sure. I still think Cortland Sutton doesn't really get the credit that he deserves, especially what he did last year.
Mhm.
Now, it remains to be seen, Dylan, what happens with, Tim Patrick. We know Mr. Tim Patrick is very, very solid, very sure hands. But
Mhm.
we'll see what happens coming off that injury. And then Josh Reynolds. Now, I like Josh Reynolds. Um, he was very good in Detroit last year, but again, this is a new team.
Mhm.
So I'm I would say Todd. I, I wouldn't say the whole room. I think that's what I'm looking at when you're saying the whole wide receiver room is underrated. Now, those players, I would say maybe 2 out of 3 of them might be underrated. A Tim Patrick, a fully healthy Tim Patrick, and a Cortland Sutton for sure are underrated.
Mhm.
And again, I like what Josh Reynolds provides, but outside of that, I mean, Marvin Mims still has to, you know, show up, has to take those next steps forward.
Mhm.
Um, we'll see what happens with Troy Franklin. I like Lil Jordan Humphrey. I think he's a good receiver, but yeah, again, I would say maybe 1 or 2 specific players underrated, Todd, but the whole
Mhm.
room, I think that's where I disagree a bit.
Mhm. And I'll bring
What
this
do you say,
up,
Dylan?
and it makes people mad sometimes, but it's that word potential. And obviously, if we're looking at them right now, just how they are, I think they're perfectly rated. I don't think they're anything special right now. Obviously, I'm a big mark for Cortland Sutton. I love the guy. I think he himself, like you mentioned, underrated as an individual. Josh Reynolds, I like, but here come the question marks. And obviously, it's a fan thing, and I do it a lot too, to be honest. But it's the potential, and we're thinking of what we want them to do and what they could do. Marvin Mims, in terms of offense, not much last year. And he still needs to diversify his route tree and integrate himself in the offense more. We haven't seen that. He has the potential to be good, but we haven't seen that. So can't pencil him in as um, a great receiver or even good yet. And maybe that's a hot take. I'm not saying he's not good, but I don't think we can put him on a pedestal just yet. And same with Tim Patrick. What's he going to look like? Obviously, he's back, and if he's healthy, even if he's healthy, is he going to have that same explosion? Is he going to be the same player that he was? I just don't. I don't think. I just can't bet on it. I think anything you get out of Tim Patrick is like sprinkles. It's like the cherry on top. Um, Troy Franklin, same thing. Potential. He's he was a fourth round guy. Probably should have been taken earlier, but he's a rookie. Going to be hard to find touches with these other guys ahead of him. And then we got Jordan Humphrey, Brandon Johnson, Virgil. They're fine.
Valet, yeah.
No one I'm like in love with. I want them to do good, but it's like I'm not head over heels for him. And I think this is a good point here by Phil. It's a wide receiver room that's undiscovered. They haven't found themselves yet. I can't say underrated. I just can't go there. Undiscovered, unproven. Now we're talking.
Yes, this is a great comment, Phil, and I 100% agree. Yeah, again, as a whole, very, very much undiscovered. Um, but yeah, time will tell. We'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. And we're rooting
I
for
think we're
him.
all wanting. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think everyone's rooting for him. I think we're
Oh yeah.
all and I think the one that we really want to see take that step forward is Marvin Mims.
Mm-hmm.
he was brought in to be Judy's successor. He's going to play, meant to be playing that Judy role.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. He has to expand that route tree. Um, has to learn how to catch and hold on to the ball. um, but yeah, I couldn't agree more, Phil, that it's a very undiscovered room, and we'll see how the season shakes out when it goes on, if they can get at least somewhat close to an underrated status.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, and potential is the big word. It's what maybe they could do, maybe what we want them to do. But yeah, I've said it plenty of times on here before. I'm a believe it when I see it kind of guy, and it's not like, oh, I don't think they'll do it, but it's I want them to, but I'm not going to come out and say this is an underrated room. I don't believe that, and I'm going to stick to that until I see otherwise.
Yep. Yep. All right. We're at 51 minutes. Let me see who else we have in here. Oh, Phil with another question. Thank you, Phil. Says, are Watson, Dulcich, and Estimate on injury list? So yeah, I believe Watson is on that non-football injury list. I think that was just announced. I believe it was Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Dulcich and Estimate are injured.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as far as the list, yeah, Watson was placed on that a few days ago.
Yeah. So hopefully that's two running backs. So I think, and I believe there was NFI, but it was an injury from college. But I guess they don't consider college football to be a football activities because it's not the NFL.
At the facility, not away from the facility.
Yeah, so that's why he's on the NFI. And then we know all about Dulcich. If I said it before, if I could donate a hamstring, I would. But I think it's his ankle this time. Maybe I need to give him both. That's fine. I could just sit here and talk on the computer,
Yeah, and he just needs a whole new like lower body, right?
Yeah, right. Just take the whole leg, man. Whatever.
But Phil, this does, now we can start to see how maybe the running back room is shaped. Now I know we all, and how, because the Broncos can still get him off that. He can still come back in training camp. Watson off that list. But if there's a major setback, let's say if he misses quite a bit of time, then you have your four. You have your Perine, your Williams, McLaughlin, and Estime. I just thought Dylan, and I think a lot of people thought that, with Watson, just giving how versatile he is, kind of leave somebody else off. But again, I think everyone's rooting for him to hopefully make the 53, and hopefully this isn't too much of a big setback. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that backfield is going to be key for this season, especially with a rookie quarterback, and it just can't be as abysmal as it was last season. Not getting we didn't get a rushing touchdown till like week 8, or by a running back anyway. That's despicable.
Yeah, and I mean, especially with Javonte, it's going to be interesting to just see how Javonte looks in the upcoming season. I mean, he averaged 3.2 yards. Listen to me once again, guys. 3.2 yards per carry over the final 10 games last year. And that's just not going to cut it as the starter.
Mm-hmm.
So I know, and what I've seen, everyone's talking, he looks bigger, he looks stronger so far in the offseason. But I mean, that has to translate into breaking tackles, which we've seen him do his rookie year. And if we get that, if we get the Javonte that give that 3.2 yards, then I don't think he's much longer for the Broncos. And here comes Estime with more snaps. Again, if Estime pans out, and I again, given what I've seen and whatnot, I really think Estime is going to be a dog. He's going to be a dog, man.
Definitely.
And then with Perine too, right? We know he's good with pass protection. Obviously, he's there catching those dump offs. But yeah, I really think it's all eyes, Dylan, are gonna be on how Pookie looks, what Pookie can do in training camp and going into the season.
100%.
All right. Let's see. All right, guys, we're 55 minutes. I'm just gonna scroll to see if we've missed anyone. Dylan, did you see? Have we missed any comments or questions here?
None.
I don't think I see. I don't think I ever see. Oh, well, just leaving it with Mike S here. I think Knicks will lead the Broncos to the playoffs. Okay. Time will tell, Mike. I'm not there with you, at least for this year. But you never know. Again, I think we brought this up a lot of times, Dylan, that any team can be last year's Texans. I again, just given what the Broncos have, I just don't see it. I think they're inching closer to being a playoff contender, Mike. So I'm not saying that you're all the way off, at least maybe down the line. Again, depending on how Bo Nix looks. But I just think going into this season, I'm not going to say playoffs yet.
Yeah, I completely agree with you to say there. Next year, I think we could have a conversation about next year. This year, we're building, we're retooling, we're figuring out what this team is and what pieces we still need to make a run, especially. This will be the last year with Russell Wilson's contract. So next year, we're going to have a bump in the salary so we can add to this team. And just one more before we get out of here from Todd. AFC West prediction finishes. I think we're going to be battling for third with the Raiders. Maybe I'm being a little pessimistic, but I just think, despite the lack of weapons on the outside for the Chargers, they have more talent in terms of an offensive line. I think the run game is going to be really good. You just have Harbaugh coaching, and not to say that Sean Payton isn't a good coach, because he is. We saw that last season with that, with Russell Wilson and then all the other mishaps that happened. But I think third place is probably a good place for them to be. And, with the Raiders, I think they have a really stacked roster. I actually really like the roster. I don't care for their quarterbacks whatsoever.
I would say third as well. Yeah, Kansas City. I think Todd brought it up here. He has his prediction, which I'll agree with. Kansas City, Chargers, the Broncos third, and the Raiders fourth. I just think what Harbaugh is going to bring. That ground attack is it's going to be very solid. And I think a lot of teams with his scheme are going to struggle with that. The opposing defenses. Now, but I will say with the Chargers, though, hopefully he can get that defense in shape.
They've had talent there for a while.
That's the thing. They have talent, and their last head coach was a defensive-minded guy, but they just couldn't get it together. Asante Samuel, Derwin James. I mean that
Mac and
that
Bosa,
defense is stacked.
Yeah.
Yes. But we'll see. But yeah, I'm going to say Broncos going to be fine for that third with the Raiders, but I think the Broncos are coming third. All righty. And then we got Phil closing us out. Thank you. Great show tonight, guys. Thanks for keeping us informed and talking Broncos. Yes, Phil. We love to do it. We love to be here with you guys on Saturday night talking about our favorite team. And I just love that you guys come in with insightful comments, questions. It really does make it a healthy discussion. So again, Phil, to everybody, thank you guys for coming in. It was a great discussion tonight. Appreciate it. All righty. Oh, then Phil coming back in. No, guys, we sweep the we sweep the Raiders, split with Kansas City and Chargers, finished second. Okay, okay. I like it. I like it. And with second, because that'll be what? Okay, we sweep the Raiders. So that's two. That'll be what? 4-2 in the division. Okay.
I'll take that.
Yeah, I mean, yep. So that'll be a playoff berth, more than likely. So yeah, I mean, I like the optimism there, Phil. But again, we'll see. I don't know if I'm quite there with you, but I like the optimism, man. All righty, guys. Well, that concludes. Again, Roy coming back in. Thank you. Great show tonight, as always. Thank you. Thank you. So that concludes tonight's episode of the Orange and Blue View. Again, guys, thank you all for tuning in. This was a great discussion. We appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share Mile High Huddle on all of the platforms. We'd greatly appreciate it. And if you have not done so already, make sure you follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. I am at Ron White NFL. My co-host is at Dylan Von Arts MHH. And before we get out of here, Dylan, do you have any parting words for the chat tonight?
Yeah, of course. I just want to highlight the Super Chat superstars that came in. You guys support us and need to give you a shout out here. So obviously we have Phil McLaughlin, Eric Flynn came in and showed some love, Howie freaking Day, and then of course Phil 2 more times as he typically does. Thank you guys so much, and everyone else in the chat. It's these days, especially going through the lull of the off season, I never think we're gonna make it to an hour, and you guys help us push us across the finish line for sure.
Yes, most definitely. And again, guys, if you can, please remember, if you can't come out, the annual meet and greet, September 15th. That will be the showdown of your Denver Broncos with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we're looking forward to seeing all of you guys. Pretty sure more details will come, where you can see us and talk. So we'll give that to you as soon as we know more. But until next time, you guys, have a great evening. Thanks again, and go Broncos.
Go Broncos.